in the 4 years that I was at my last role, I had started to stagnate. I had started to basically get too comfortable because I knew everything. When I first started, everything was new. And I was like drinking from the fire hose. So once I got used to that and I understood the stack and I knew it basically inside and out, or at least the components that I was used to, I had stopped being challenged and was more in a maintenance mode. And that is dangerous.
I'm here with my client, Michael, who just landed a federal software engineering position. And we're doing a quick interview to just talk about what that journey looked like. So yeah, congrats again, Mike, on landing the role. Maybe before getting into the new role, we can start with where were you career-wise when you came to join the program?
So I had been laid off as part of a downsizing in the North American engineering team at my prior employer, and was looking for ways to sharpen my skills. One of which was restarting a online school for my Bachelor of Science degree in computer science. And another was to look for ways to understand a broader context of architecture, which I hadn't really been exposed to all that much, things that usually were solved by DevOps. So I knew through having a few interviews at companies that were asking architecture type questions that I had a weakness in my knowledge base. So I started looking for, online kind of tutorials and things like that, which, that's always the first instinct. And I came across this program and I started watching the videos and it made a lot of sense. So I looked into the program itself. I saw offered and I said, this sounds like something that would help me. And that's kind of how I came to it. It was just looking for YouTube tutorials and I found the best ones that I could find, the ones that resonated the most with me and that were actually helpful to explaining the concepts that I was missing in my knowledge toolkit.
And at that point, like, how long have you been searching for a job?
Probably 3 months, I'd say.
And as I remember, you were getting interviews, right? But you were not passing them yet.
Yes, I had several interviews, and they kind of made me understand that like just having the knowledge of coding, Java coding, which is what I was doing, was not enough. I needed to have a broader base of knowledge in this age of AI. So, and it also was interesting to me as I started to learn more about like, why do you have load balancers? Why do you have, these components that I'd always heard about that I never had to worry about because it just worked.
Yeah. So was that the main issue why like these interviews were getting like not getting passed?
I think that yes. I think that while the human aspect of it went well, the technical knowledge that I didn't have at the time or was a little shaky on came through in those interviews. My knowledge of Java and object-oriented programming was fine, but the bigger picture of why applications or stacks are built in the ways that they are and the trade-offs that come along with those decisions weren't clear to me, and that became an issue with some of these hiring managers.
Yeah. And were these like skills did this came handy when going through the interviews for these last ones, or specifically this one that you landed?
I think that my confidence in my ability to describe a solution to one of their hypothetical problems was instrumental in getting the nod for this position, because I asked later, because my background is in enterprise systems rather than cybersecurity, which is this involves, why they would choose someone who has very little experience with cybersecurity. And they said that my ability to describe a solution was more important than my actual knowledge of cybersecurity, which they could teach me themselves. But they said that they liked the way that I was able to break down the problem into functional parts and design the solution and then explain the solution in a way that made sense.
So they were just looking for someone with the foundations, and then the rest they can just teach you on the go.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. And also, like, when you came to join the program, I remember you had a clear, like, what is the goal of the role, right? It's either, let's say, some stable, established company, or a federal role where, like, not like a startup. So basically some role where you get the stability. So now I think you landed exactly like the federal role, right? What do you think? Well, how do you feel about this role?
I feel excited. It seems like the type of role that offers the stability that I was looking for, but is at the same time not just another coding role that is, I don't know, more of kind of what I was doing. It gives me the ability to, or the necessity to learn about an entirely different way of thinking about the software development lifecycle, from a more secure aspect of it, which is what they're looking for. And it will challenge me, which I also enjoy. I like constantly learning, bettering my own knowledge. And I think that in the 4 years that I was at my last role, I had started to stagnate. I had started to basically get too comfortable because I knew everything. When I first started, everything was new. And I was like drinking from the fire hose. So once I got used to that and I understood the stack and I knew it basically inside and out, or at least the components that I was used to, I had stopped being challenged and was more in a maintenance mode. And that is dangerous. So I think that this is good and that it has spurred me to an opportunity for learning and pushing my knowledge boundaries and pushing me out of my comfort zone of just doing the same old, and this will be something quite different than that, I think.
So also apart from that, do you think it will be like a stable role and allow you to grow in your skills?
Yes, I believe, most federal jobs are generally pretty stable, and the cybersecurity concerns that the federal government has are not going away anytime soon. So I'm pretty sure that this role will be a necessity for quite a while to come. And that's one of the aspects of it, is that, like, cybersecurity by it kind of fundamentally is always, it's not a case of you fighting the machine, it's you fighting someone else who's trying to get into your machine. So there's always the challenge of someone coming up with a new exploit or a way to get in. So you're not actually learning a new framework or something. I mean, you learn those too, but you're going to always be constantly challenged by the ingenuity of other humans who are your adversaries, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. And also another thing which is like was also one of your weakest points, right? But also other engineers think that it's mostly about grinding LeetCode or data structure algorithm problems to land roles. Was that even part of what got you to this offer?
I think the most technical questions that I were asked were about joins for SQL and probably like about OOP concepts and the software development lifecycle in general.
Yeah.
But usually the questions that they were asking me weren't like whiteboarding type kind of stuff.
So mostly like practical questions and think like system questions about how would you solve a problem.
Right. Yeah, I think most of them, even the ones that don't use AI, realize that those types of questions that can be solved by an AI are not as important as understanding the broader concepts and being able to explain why you're making these decisions rather than just coming up with an answer. Like it's more the capability of walking through the steps that you're thinking and maybe making corrections as on the fly. You know, nobody expects you to be able to answer an off the cuff question that's very complex uh, correctly the first time. So I think it was more of that ability to decipher the problem, define it, give it scope, and then come up with the design for a draft solution.
Mhm. So mostly the skills you needed for this was technical foundation, which you had, right? And system design and architectural skills for landing the role.
Yes. Yeah, I would
Yeah.
say that again, it comes through in the confidence and the ability to talk about, you know, uh, the design choices that you make when you actually know why you're making those design choices and not just because it's a buzzword that you heard for, you know, handling distributed computing architecture, you know, like the idea that you know what you're talking about, it comes across to the people who are listening to your solution when you have the confidence and
Mm,
the abilities and your knowledge.
yeah, great. And also coming back to the program, what was the most valuable part of this for you?
I think the structure of approaching the design of a system was the most valuable because I had never really sat down and thought about from a high level about how to design an application. I was usually a single component or an integration, you know, like a little more in the weeds kind of in my professional career than coming up with an entire system from start to finish. Um, and it didn't really occur to me that you need to like have a system that gives you a solid framework of how to approach that problem rather than just like throw whatever seems like best at that moment at the system or at the design. So that was very helpful.
So basically like how to make architectural decisions and also the whys behind the decisions apart from the
Yes,
hows.
I think being able to talk about the trade-offs is uh, was the most impressive part. Was like you can do it this way or you can do it this way, but here's why I would choose this. And knowing that there's no perfect solution to any problem, it's more just why you would work through it this way or why you would choose, you know, the this strategy than the single correct answer that they and acknowledging like there's other ways to do this that may or may not be better depending on what the client wants or the customer wants. But we could give them these options and explain each one of these trade-offs in detail.
Yeah, glad it was helpful. And lastly, who do you think would benefit the most from joining the program?
I think from my experience, someone who has been stuck for a while doing the same old thing and hasn't been challenged and doesn't have up-to-date knowledge of the overarching software development lifecycle, modern frameworks, and isn't comfortable explaining their design decisions, I would say is probably who would benefit the most.
Yeah, great. I guess that's it. Thanks, Mike.
My pleasure.